What is going on? Welcome everybody to another edition of Demo Days. I'm Garrett Browne, your host, and we do Demo Days twice a week. I'm very excited about this week's Demo Days because, for many of you out there in the managed IT community, I think you're gonna recognize this, and you're probably gonna look around and be like, "Wait, what? You guys?" Like I did. I'm very excited to introduce some veterans in a company as well, that Phoenix Technologies. And I have Rob Inman and Ameet Dhillon with me from Phoenix. Gentlemen, welcome. It's glad to have you guys on. I'm honored. I was fangirling when I first met you guys.
Good to be here, Garrett. Yeah, I remember our first conversation.
Tell us about yourselves, the company, and why I'm fangirling.
Sure. You want to go first, Rob?
Oh, you are on mute. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the
Rob,
industry.
you are too for some reason. You guys are both. Hold on for a second.
Oh.
All right, now give that a shot.
Can you hear us better now?
Are we live?
You know what? Okay.
Wouldn't be live if we didn't have technical difficulties.
Yeah.
You guys there? You talk.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear us now, Garrett?
One second.
I can certainly hear you both.
And all right, can you guys say something?
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't know why.
Is that any better, Garrett? Can you hear us now? I can hear you both.
Yep, I can also hear everyone.
All right.
That's interesting.
Just real quick, can you check your settings on the audio and make sure it's turned on? I apologize. I might have to. And for those of you who are joining, welcome. Jacob, pleasure to see you. Now we have a couple of people.
I'm unmuted. Rob, you can hear me?
I can hear you, and I'm also unmuted.
That's interesting. So you and I can hear each other. Garrett, you can't hear us, right?
Something.
Yeah.
And can you guys hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay. You can hear them fine? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe it's somehow me, but you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, and I will get mine fixed. So my apologies. Okay. All right.
No
we have a lot of
problem.
people coming in. So guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So my name is Rob Inman. I'm the director of product at Phoenix Technologies. I've been in the IT space for a fairly long time. Actually, started out building 386 and 486 computers, a lot of them which had Phoenix BIOSes in them. So I was very excited to join the company because it definitely took me back to my starting days of getting into technology.
And my name is Ameet Dhillon. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Phoenix, and really looking forward to talking to you about our product FirmGuard, which you can see there over my shoulder. Rob's going to do a demo a little bit later, and we've got a few exciting things to talk about FirmGuard. And I should say, very simply put, just to start off, FirmGuard is all about BIOS management. So you're going to hear us talk about UEFI and BIOS quite a bit today. And we've obviously, Phoenix has been in that space for a long time, but FirmGuard's a very MSP oriented product.
And I guess this is our show for now until Garrett gets his
I guess
set up. So yeah. So no, I'm very excited. We have so many years of BIOS experience. We've been Phoenix as a company has been doing this for over 45 years now, and we have a lot of engineers that know their ways in and out of BIOS and firmwares. So we decided at some point, hey, why don't we use all of that knowledge that we have and put it to good use to our MSP space? And that way we were able to come up with a product that allowed access to the BIOS for our MSP partners in a way that really hasn't been offered before, which is remotely. Historically, you've had to have physical access to a machine, have to reboot the machine, figure out what the correct F key is to press to get into the BIOS, and then that way you can come in and make some changes.
Yeah, and Rob, you bring up a good point. So, everything about the FirmGuard product, it's, oriented for MSPs. So, you've got a portal that you log into, which Rob can show. In fact, maybe we want to launch into that, Rob. But the key is that you can remotely secure, configure, update, and really just generally monitor the BIOS. So you can imagine, as Rob was talking about, in the old days, if you needed to update anything, some settings in the BIOS to turn on TPM or something like that, you'd have to go to the physical endpoint and get into a screen from whoever the manufacturer was. We get rid of all of that. You can now go in on a standard interface. Doesn't matter if it's a Dell or HP or Asus or whatever kind of manufacturer it may be. You can go in and change the BIOS without ever having to physically be in front of the machine. And that's just one aspect. We talk about configuration. We allow you to do things like securely wipe a drive. So you no longer have to have people send you the endpoint to do a forensic wipe. And we provide a certificate of erasure as well. So it's all about BIOS security, of course, and we'll talk about that. But it's also about technician efficiency, and then ultimately about helping you increase your MRR as an MSP. Are we able to share screen? Do you want to?
Oh, Garrett, now we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Garrett.
No, your audio is muted now. So we switched from being able to hear you. Yeah, you're completely muted now.
Yeah, Garrett, you want to just share one of the screens? Yeah, you want to.
So let's pop right into this. So as you see here, this is the dashboard of our product, right? And this is where you can kind of like take a look to see how everything is behaving across the devices where you have FirmGuard installed. Now, how exactly does FirmGuard work? Well, basically, it's an agent that you install. Currently in Windows, we are working on a Linux version that should be out in the near future. But currently it is a Windows agent that you install on the devices. That Windows agent will communicate with the firmware to make any changes that you put here in the dashboard. And that way, that's how those changes get made. But here, probably the most important part that I like to see in the dashboard is this endpoint health section, because this gives you some information about what exactly is going on in your environment. So the first one that you see here is secure boot being disabled. Now, secure boot is a boot mode that was created by the UEFI, which is an alliance, to modernize the BIOS. And basically, the idea behind secure boot is that it checks throughout the boot process to make sure that Windows is booting as expected, so that no one can come in and kind of hijack the boot, kind of hide behind the OS, and just do nasty things on the machine. That was the whole point of secure boot. So it is something that you definitely want to have enabled for security on all devices. And we've actually found that, anywhere from 10 to 20% of the machines that this has been installed on that we see, they actually show secure boot disabled. And a lot of the partners, actually pretty much every partner that we talk to that we come up with, they basically don't realize that secure boot is disabled. So, this is something that you can see now in the dashboard. Now, secure boot is a feature that needs to be enabled inside the BIOS. So historically, it's one of those things that why show you that something is wrong if then you're actually going to have to go and go on location, have a technician go on site, go on the machine, reboot the machine, and make those changes. And that's really the purpose of FirmGuard here. And I'll walk you through the process. So as you see here, it shows that secure boot is disabled. So we can click into it. Shows me the endpoints which are have secure boot disabled, so I can pop into one of those. As you can see, we have some options here on the left. You'll see that we have this alert, critical alert, which is because secure boot appears to be disabled. And how we're going to fix that is to go into our secure config. Now, this is where we'll see all of the BIOS settings for this particular device. So as you see here, as I scroll through, these are all the BIOS settings on this Lenovo machine. So we have access to everything here. Now, the part that I'm interested in here is secure boot. So let's expand that. And sure enough, secure boot here is unchecked. It's not enabled. So I can click this on and click save. Now, in order for any BIOS changes to be turned on or change whatever you change, you do need to reboot the machine. So you have a couple options here. You can either do it immediately, which will send the reboot command and will make those changes, and it kind of depends on how critical you feel this is, or you can schedule it out. So, if I wanted to say, hey, I want to do it this afternoon at 6 p.m. after hours, so I'm not interrupting the end user, you're more than welcome to do that. So that way you don't have complaints that, they were in the middle of doing something and their machine rebooted. So you have these options when you make those changes.
And Rob, if I could interject, you've talked quite a bit about secure boot, which is, obviously a really important thing. And what I want to emphasize is that when we talk about firmware vulnerabilities, because one of the key things which you're showing secure check, the ability to monitor BIOS to make sure that the BIOS doesn't get infected. One of the key things that hackers try to do with these these BIOS vulnerabilities is to disable secure boot, right? So what we're showing you here is probably the single most common way that hackers try to compromise the BIOS of a given endpoint, because as you point out, if you're able to disable secure boot, essentially what that means then is that you can launch a rogue operating system, which, if you're a hacker, that's clearly what you'd love to be able to do, because if you can launch, the operating system of your choice, well, then you've got complete control over the endpoint. And so, that's sort of why we're focused so much in talking about something like secure boot.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to the dashboard, as you can see, we have a couple other things that we show you. Legacy boot being enabled is another one. BitLocker, of course, I'm sure you're familiar with. And last, firmware out of sync, which I'll go into a little later. But I want to focus on legacy boot. That is something else that sometimes gets overlooked. I have one machine that I have legacy boot OS installed on. And you'll notice that this machine is running Windows 10. So most RMMs that you're using to look at these devices, they will show that it's running Windows 10. And quite frankly, that should raise no red flags because it is Windows 10. It's not like you're running, Windows XP or an outdated OS that you need to upgrade. Right. But here we show you that it is running in legacy mode. Now, legacy mode can be installed by mistake when you're actually installing the OS, but most probably it's installed in legacy mode is because the machine actually doesn't have the security hardware required for Windows 10 to be installed properly, which is in a secured state.
And just to sort of point out some figures that we have. So, as we've been doing, we've had endpoints installs from various MSPs all across the country. We've seen roughly about, I think it's 10% of endpoints that are actually sitting there in legacy mode. And we talked about secure boot earlier. If you're in legacy mode, this means it's very old, and so mechanisms like secure boot are just not available anymore. So the endpoint is inherently insecure at that point. And so, really what we've emphasized with our MSP partners is that, as you install FirmGuard and as you start to get a sense of which endpoints are in legacy mode, that can begin a conversation with your client to say, hey, look, these ones that are in legacy mode, as Rob points out, they're likely very old. If you look at the current one that's on the screen, that's back from 2017. It can help MSPs begin a conversation to replace those machines, because that's really what you should do. Unless, as Rob points out, if you've accidentally put it in legacy mode, okay, fine, you can reinstall the OS. But probably 90% of the time, it's just because it's an old machine. And so that's a great way for MSPs to begin that conversation and have a sort of a recycling, if you will, of endpoints.
Exactly. All right. So those are a couple of things that we see here in the endpoint health. But going back to looking at the endpoints that we have. Now, I do want to mention that the way that we operate in the BIOS is not just, hey, let's put it out there and let's see what happens, right? We know that firmware is an integral part of the machine. And if we get it wrong, well, quite frankly, something bad might happen. The machine may not boot, and we definitely want to avoid that. So the way that we handle this is we actually use an allow list as far as which machines we currently support. And right now, that allow list consists of Dells, HPs, and Lenovo's. So you're going to get the advanced configuration, or basically all of the BIOS options for those 3 machines. And we found that, like about 65% of the installed base across business customers are those 3 machines. So we are covering a large percentage of that. But we test those machines in our lab. We make sure that we understand how they are using the BIOS within those machines, because even though UFI is supposed to be a standard, sometimes these manufacturers, they decide to do certain different things within their BIOSes. So currently it is Dell, HP, and Lenovo. We are working on examining more machines and eventually adding them to that allow list. So you will see that number grow, but that's where you're going to see the largest number of the machines options available are within those Dell, HP, and Lenovo machines. So with that being said, let me just pop into a Dell here. So again, if I go here into secure config, where I have all my BIOS settings. So we talked a little bit about the security side of things. And that's definitely something that's very important. You want to make sure secure boot is enabled on these machines. But now that you have access to the BIOS, we're finding that our partners are telling us things that, wait a minute, there are these settings in the BIOS that I've kind of left forgotten, because again, I don't have access to these machines or to the BIOS of these machines readily. So for example, I want to make sure that I have Wake on LAN turned on these machines. So, I can do a search. Again, some of these BIOSes have a lot of different settings. So I can do a search up here. It expands wherever it finds, in this case, the word just Wake. This first one is Wake on dock. So I'll come down here, Wake on LAN. Actually it's disabled on this Dell. So I can come over here and enable it. Again, save it, reboot the machine. And now you'll have Wake on LAN turned on this machine. Another example that we've been given is that, for example, if you're going in and you're doing a BitLocker deployment, right? Sometimes you inherit an account and they might not have BitLocker installed. So you have to go out there and install BitLocker. Well, you'll have your RMM do it and it'll push BitLocker out, but then you'll get some errors. You'll get 5 machines where BitLocker wasn't able to be installed because most likely the TPM chip wasn't set up correctly. So, likewise, that's something that's governed within the BIOS. So we can go ahead and do a TPM search. Here's where our TPM 2.0 security, which is what you need for BitLocker. We can, again, turn it on right from here. And then that way now you can save this, reboot it, and keep going with your BitLocker deployment. So if you think about it, in the past, this was something that if you had those 5 machines where the TPM wasn't set up correctly, you would have to stop that BitLocker deployment, put a ticket out to have a technician go on site, and then go to those 5 machines, probably interrupt those users during their workday, and change the settings on each one of those machines, and then come back to the office.
Right.
Now,
or the other way,
restart the process of pushing out BitLocker to all the machines. So as you can see, this makes it a lot faster, a lot easier. Now you don't actually have to have a technician go on site. So that's one of the reasons that our customers really love this software, because it gives them the ability to do these things without having to dispatch a technician on site.
Can I jump in here? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Garrett.
I just want to say, I love that, by the way. As a former MSP, BitLocker was such a big deal. It wasted so much time having to send them on. So I love the fact that you can do this. This is a game changer. And no joke, I love this.
Yeah, and the other key is, we've got some use cases here where, it's one thing if you're managing endpoints that are maybe in the same city or even, same area, but we've had customers that have got that their clients are overseas. And so, you simply can't go on site. So what do? They wind up then having to try and get on the phone and try and, walk some person who's not that technical through the BIOS setup screen to do all this. And so you can imagine how painful that is. We have a use case, on our website, a live MSP that had that issue. And they told us that they took about 15 minutes to solve the problem. And if they had to try and talk somebody through it, it would have taken days just to to set up a call. So, this is a great example of sort of the technician efficiency aspect of FirmGuard.
And then here's the next step, which I think is really cool also. So these are some things that, some of our partners have run into. And again, it's kind of like the realization of, wow, I actually have access to the BIOS now, which in the past, because you didn't have that access, you kind of like really didn't think much about it. But so all of a sudden now, hey, I can turn on wake on LAN. I can, change the TPM settings. Well, why don't we do something a little more basic? What if I go into my USB settings? Way back in the day, I get brought, hey, this machine is locked. We can't do anything on it. They forgot the password. The guy left, whatever the case is. Easiest way for me to get into a machine was to grab a USB boot device, pop it into the machine and boot from that. And now have access to a different OS tools that I can, get onto that machine's hard drive and access information off of it. So that's a huge loophole that is completely bypasses all your Windows security, all the EDR software that you have installed in Windows. All of that is completely bypassed by this. So coming in here and, for example, enable USB boot support, turning this off right there. I mean, a lot of my partners are like, wow, now I can actually not just protect the OS, but now I can expand my security into the firmware space before the OS even boots. So, it's this realization of, wow, it's the OS is pretty well secured in today's day and age. But now you have this whole other area that is basically closing those loopholes that have been around forever, because again, it was a space that was just so difficult to access. So now you're able to do these things. And as an MSP, because I like to sometimes think of from my MSP days, how would this benefit me? Well, if I think about going around and prospecting and talking to customers and asking them, well, what is your current MSP doing for you? And asking them, well, listen, pretty much every MSP is going to secure you in the Windows space or in the OS space, but what is your MSP doing to protect you from the firmware? From the minute that power button gets turned on, how are they protecting you? And most of the time, the answer is they're not doing anything. They probably don't know, but when they ask, no, they're not doing anything. So, with FirmGuard, you can tell them, well, we expand that security out into the firmware. So not only are we making sure that your BIOS is secured, that you have secure boot enabled, that you're not booting into legacy mode, that your BIOS is up to date, but we can also change those settings to make sure that endpoint is as secure as possible from the firmware level.
And this is a real opportunity for MSPs, right? So, as Rob alludes to, the BIOS is the very first piece of software that comes on when you turn on the laptop or desktop, what have you. And we're used to securing the OS and the application layer, but nobody thinks about that very first layer. As we talk about, it's something that can be hacked. So in some sense, as an MSP, you're only protecting 2/3 of the software on a given endpoint. There's that entire 1/3, that BIOS layer, that's not protected. And so, not only is it the right thing to do from a security perspective to protect that, but it's also an opportunity to increase your MRR. I mean, the way you charge your customers for EDR, for OS and application, there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't be charging them for that layer. Particularly if they want to stay in compliance, if they happen to be in, medical industry or what have you, it's even doubly important.
What I want to, I was thinking something here, and Ben Gilbertson out there, he was saying this. I was thinking the exact same thing. I would use this to basically turn off things like he said, Ben, on screens that's always on USB, because there's a lot of, you guys are absolutely right. It's hard to manage that stuff because that is another layer of an attack vector. I would absolutely use this. I think it's great. It sounds like Ben and others are doing the same thing. So thank you for that comment, Ben.
Yeah, Ben's been a customer of FirmGuard for quite a while. He knows it probably as well as anybody.
I do have a question, guys, and I was having audio difficulties earlier, so my apologies. I'm not sure what happened there.
Not a problem.
So, we talked previously, and one of the things is like, okay, well, it's the BIOS. You don't really have that visibility, but you have a tool you mentioned called secure check audit to be able to, really throw on there and really take the BIOS management and audit to really a centralized management. Like what is that about, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, actually, Garrett, if you can show my screen, I'll give
Sure.
you a sense of what that is.
Alrighty.
Hopefully everybody can see this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a free secure check audit that we offer. In fact, I would encourage everybody on the call right now to go to their browser and type in firmguard.com/CP for channel program. And what this is, as it says, it's totally free. There's absolutely no charge for this. You get, complete use of FirmGuard, every feature that Rob's talking about. But this is more than just an evaluation, right? This is, obviously gives you a chance to see the product, but you can actually use this as an MSP, as a prospecting tool. And what do I mean by that? So you can take advantage of this secure check audit, and you can deploy this across as many of your clients as you want. So, you could pick a client, install FirmGuard across all their endpoints. And as Rob was showing you, this is going to give you actionable information about that particular client. So it'll give you a sense of, hey, they've got X number of endpoints that are in legacy mode, and you'll be able to pinpoint exactly which endpoints those are. And that can begin a conversation to say, hey, look, we found these insecurities within your network. We should talk about, replacing those PCs. You can give them a sense of, how many don't have secure boot enabled, and explain why that is a problem. And even more simply, you can give people a sense of, hey, you've only got BitLocker enabled on, perhaps a very small percentage of your endpoints. So, we had a customer who used it for that purpose, and they were very surprised to find out that only about 30% of the endpoints of some of their clients had BitLocker enabled, and there was no easy way to get that information. So I encourage everybody to take advantage of the secure check audit, and really use it as a prospecting tool to really begin to understand what the bias looks like in the endpoints in your customers.
So first of all, I want to say that's not just 30%. Only at BitLocker. That's
it's hard to believe, but yeah. And in fact, I'll tell you, Garrett, even, this is a customer that mentioned this, and Rob knows this very well. We've obviously deployed FirmGuard across, a large number of endpoints. You'd be amazed at how low the percentage of endpoints that have BitLocker enabled is. 10, 20, 30, 40, much less than 50% in many cases.
So I know, Rob, you were sharing your screen, but okay, there's something kind of popping in my head here. As MSP who managed switches, servers, and all that stuff, you have HP, you have Dell, you have all kinds of stuff. And I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but why would I use you guys versus using like the built-in stuff, like from the tools from Dell, from HP? Because it seems like I can just use that and go in, but like, why would I, like, what's the benefit using you guys as opposed to the native vendor tools?
Well, the main reason is because you have access to everything from one place, right? So you have one dashboard to look at. It's the UI is going to be very similar across all the different devices, so your technicians don't have to learn anything new. It is all remote. I mean, I know that some of the Dell servers and HP servers, they have remote management on those devices, but generally on the endpoints, you need to like remote into the machine where now you're interrupting the user, or you're doing it after hours, in order to use like the Dell managed tools and stuff like that to make the changes that you need to make.
Yeah, Rob, yes, pretty much said it all. But simply put, FirmGuard is designed to work across a heterogeneous set of manufacturers. So pretty much every MSP I've ever talked to, they don't have machines just from one manufacturer. It's not all Dell or all HP. It tends to be across the board. And so as Rob pointed out, with something like FirmGuard, it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is. It looks exactly the same.
I like that. Yeah, that makes total sense, because that's one of those things where it's like, hey, I don't have to teach you HP stuff or any of this stuff. Just use this. And okay.
and there's no additional cost either, right? So if you have to deal with different vendor tools, you got to deal with licensing and so forth. Here, it's one. You just pay for FirmGuard, and it doesn't matter whether you're managing an HP, a Dell, a Asus, what have you. It's all the same.
All right. Okay. You got me there. All right. Rob, I'll switch you back over because I'm very fascinated with your demo. Is it okay if I jump back over to that?
Yeah, good.
All right. There you go, sir.
But yeah, so that's, again, I showed you a lot of the things that you can do within the BIOS. We jumped into a Lenovo, we jumped into a Dell, and that's kind of like the type of things that I love seeing our customers, because I can kind of see these ideas blossoming in their mind of like, wait, now I can do this, now I can do that. Now I'll take this opportunity to answer a question that I get very frequently, that I'm sure some of the viewers may have that same question. So I'd rather get ahead of it and answer it. Which is great. So, you showed me how to turn on Wake on LAN. Can I go ahead and, basically turn Wake on LAN on all the machines, or set a profile to have Wake on LAN on all the machines? And right now that answer is unfortunately not. So, you do have to go in the machine and change it. And I'll actually kind of show you reason why. It sounds like a very simple thing to do, but like, for example, if we take a look over here, Wake on LAN gives me disabled LAN only or LAN with PXE boot, right? This is only. So let me pop back over here. Let's go back to this Lenovo actually, and go into the settings for the Lenovo, and Wake on LAN is right here. So Wake on LAN on the Lenovo is set to primary, automatic, or disabled. So, as you can see, each manufacturer has like a different way of listing those different settings. I've seen other manufacturers that actually have a checkbox setting for Wake on LAN, where it's either on or off, or a drop-down, enabled, disabled. So it's hard for us to be able to say, put this setting on the BIOS when every manufacturer decides to do it differently. Now, that's not to say that we're not working towards that, because we know that it would be a huge boon. So we're looking at different methods that can allow for something like that. But currently, it's not as simple problem as it first seems. But what I would like to remind you is, coming in here, like I just went into 2 Wake on LAN settings pretty quickly. If I had to do that on 2 separate machines at a customer location, it would have taken me a lot longer to do it. So, even this method of going, into each machine is still a lot easier, a lot quicker than the pre-FirmGuard days of actually having to have hands on the machine. So just wanted to point that out, because like I said, that is a question that I do get fairly frequently, because it's obvious, right? I mean, people are using an RMM tool and they're like, well, let me get this Windows setting and push it across all devices. Well, you're using Windows, across all these devices. So that's the difference here. Each BIOS likes to kind of put their own spin on how they work.
Right.
So let me jump in here real quick. So for everybody who's joining, if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, feel free to drop a comment, or if you want to ask them a question, drop it in. This is recorded, so after the fact, you can drop a comment. You can get in touch with them as well. I do have a question with this. First of all, I'm blown away. Because I don't say that very often, because you guys, what you've done with something that has always been sort of an island, it's on its own island. You got to go there. I'm just a little mind blown that you're bringing this in this way. I love it. And so, with that question is, I have a standardized set of laptops.
Mm-hmm.
Can I template settings, and then when I use something like autopilot or whatever, is there a way for me to drop that in, and this automatically, if it's a Lenovo like this, will it change the settings automatically for me, such as disabling the USB on, things like that? Or you if you've talked about it earlier, because my audio settings, my apologies. So
no, that's fine. So yeah, that's similar to the profiling that I was just talking about. We don't currently have that right now, because like you said, that is one idea that we've thought about, right? Well, just let's say for this model to allow for that. The thing that we found is, even within and someone that's worked at Dell, actually, I spoke to someone that worked at Dell, and they actually told me that they'll have the same model laptop, and they'll have like a bin behind them of like 6 different sources for a particular device. They might all be the same, I don't know, let's say Wi-Fi board, but they're from 6 different manufacturers. So they'll just put in the same model laptop, different components. So, and the BIOS is the same way, where like, even just updating the BIOS, it might be something as simple as we used to call this feature something, but now everyone's calling it something else. So for this BIOS update, we're actually changing how we call this feature. So even on the same machine, updating to a different version of the BIOS will basically change what you're looking at and the way that you can, enable, disable, change that option. So, we're looking at different things. We're looking at like maybe AI to determine like positive and negative responses. So, a checkbox is positive, enable is positive, things like that, so that we can say, well, put in, enabling is a positive response. So if it's a check mark, go ahead and check it. If it says yes or no, click yes. If it says enable, disable, click enable, and that way we can use something that is a little wider than just the specific BIOSes. But again, I mentioned before that BIOSes are very, very crucial to the operation of the machine. So we want to make sure that we don't get it wrong. We don't like assume something and then we push out a setting that is the wrong setting, and now you're getting an unexpected result from that. So we always err towards the side of caution when it comes to this.
Right.
So
and the key really is we have to be faithful to the BIOS settings of the manufacturer. So everything that you see here that we've displayed, this is all coming directly from the endpoint itself. And so we're sort of have to very faithfully reproduce that. But the key is, as we talked about before, we can do it in a very similar look and feel. So you don't have to get into totally different tools, depending upon what manufacturer you're dealing with.
I like it. This is seriously, I'm mind blown. This is one of those things where, I'm always like, oh, you want to check something, before we send it out. But this is, yeah, man, you guys have done something I never thought would be done. So,
well, we go to MSP conferences, and it's very interesting to see because, we do have a big backdrop with, our name, the FirmGuard name, the Phoenix name, and we also bought a Packard Bell 46 computer that we have on our stand open because it has a Phoenix BIOS on it. And so it usually, people will come by and they'll look at our name, and then you'll see the realization. We actually have in our tagline, yes, we're that Phoenix, because that's what people always say, oh, you're that Phoenix. Yes, we're that Phoenix. So there's that realization. And then they come over and they look at the computer and they're like, oh my gosh, look at this. And, again, walking down memory lane with that. And then the question, okay, so what do you guys actually do? Oh, we do remote BIOS management. What? I didn't know you could do that. Are you kidding me? Show it to me. So it's great to see like that sort of reaction of, seeing what Phoenix is, seeing how long we've been doing this by taking a look at the 46, and then understanding that we have a product that you can do this remote BIOS management.
Yeah, and we often get the question of, well, why hasn't this been done before? And I think the answer to that really is, BIOS is very different from operating system or application. And so in order to be able to do some of the things that we do, and I think Rob's going to show secure wipe in a bit, the reason we're able to do these sorts of things is because we have that expertise in BIOS, right? So we've been doing this since 1979. Phoenix has been writing BIOS that are used in, ThinkPads and various other endpoints that are out there. And it's because we've accumulated that knowledge over that period of time that we understand all these subtle nuances that Rob's talking about. And, it's really been taking all that knowledge and then putting it together into a package that an MSP can actually consume. Because if we make, complex tools that are very hard to use, well, then no MSP is going to want to use that. So we have to put this into a web-based portal. It's cloud-based and so forth.
So if you want me jumping in here, security, vulnerabilities. So every day, there's CVEs, there's all kinds of breaches, through hacks.
Right.
BIOS is, like you said, BIOS is different, because, I know there are definitely vulnerabilities and threats to BIOS. How do I mean, I can see, you could check for stuff, but is there like a, can I see all the vulnerabilities that are for BIOS? Like, what's the information about them, or do you guys?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like,
I can talk about that. So we actually maintain a list on our website. So if you go to firmguard.com and you look at security notifications, we've got a list, and they have names like PK Fail and Black Lotus and so forth. So if you're just interested to understand what they are, we certainly have that resource. But I think one of the key things about our product is that you as an MSP don't have to do that. Right. The same way, you get EDR software from your favorite vendor, you don't then have to worry about, okay, are we keeping track of the latest, vulnerabilities that are out there. That's where we come in. But yeah, if you're interested in getting information, by all means, go to firmguard.com, look at our security notifications, and you'll see a bunch of information there. I'll talk about one specific, vulnerability. There's one that's called Black Lotus. And this is one that Microsoft talks about quite a bit. And it does, exactly what we talked about earlier. What it attempts to do is to disable secure boot. And again, that's a favorite tool of hackers, because the moment that they can do that, well, then you can launch any operating system that you want, your rogue operating system. Because again, as Rob talked about, secure boot is a mechanism that the UEFI forum, which is the group that standardizes BIOS, Phoenix is a co-founder of that. It's a mechanism they put in place to make sure that when the firmware launches an operating system, that you're launching an authenticated version of the OS. And if you disable secure boot, well, then you can launch a non-authenticated version, and off you go.
So it looks like we lost Garrett for a little bit again. He's probably setting up some things.
Okay.
So, there he is.
There he is.
Welcome
back.
This opportunity to talk about a couple of things that are a little adjacent to the BIOS settings. So, we talked about making those changes in the BIOS, but being at the firmware level also allows us to do a couple of other things that I think are pretty interesting. We talked a little bit about, I think Ameet mentioned a little bit about, like doctor's offices, people that need compliance. And that's what our secure wipe tool can really be very helpful. So normally when you have to wipe data from a drive, especially if you're talking about like a doctor's office or someone that has to conform to some sort of compliance, you have to follow certain ways of doing it, right? And again, historically, that way is you have a technician go on site, pull the drive, bring it back to the office, destroy it, or go on site and actually do a wipe via the OS where they overwrite ones and zeros onto the drive to make sure all the data has been destroyed. What we have here with Secure Wipe is a way to do that remotely. So as you can see on this Lenovo, I have one drive. I can select it and click Wipe Drive, and now I have different algorithms available to me. So here's where I can select what type of wipe I want to do. Now, these first 4 wipes are actually hardware wipes. Again, because we're at the firmware level, we have access to these hardware wipes that the drive supports. So those are usually actually the best method to be able to wipe the drive. But if we scroll down, you see we have different methodologies. Again, some government agencies that have their own method that they want to use, even up to the US DoD method of wiping a drive. So you select the method that your client needs, click erase. Now, of course, you're going to get the big scary message that all the information is going to be gone, because it is gone. It's out. So you click confirm. Of course, that's going to reboot the machine and start the wipe. Again, not at the OS, but from the firmware. But now the nice thing about this is that you'll have access after that's done to this certificate of erasure. And now this is what an auditor is going to want to see, right? Because if they see, hey, you just decommissioned these 5 hard drives in my doctor's office over here, how can I make sure that they're still HIPAA compliant? What about all that patient data that's been sitting on those drives. Well, here you can say, well, here's the erasure, certificate of erasure for this Hitachi drive with this serial number, and you can see the erase method that I used on here. So, and the date and time, of course. So that way, that auditor is going to see this and say, oh, okay, so yeah, this conforms to the HIPAA regulations. So this doctor's office can maintain their HIPAA requirements. So this is something that you can offer your clients in a way that, again, you can do it securely, remotely. And, you know, I was talking to one partner that was offering this service, and, you know, it was expensive because it was very labor intensive. So at one point, one of their customers actually said, I'm going to stop this service. It's getting a little expensive for me. So I'm just going to stop, you know, I'm going to keep you on as an MSP, just not this service. Well, once they saw this and they did the math, they're able to offer now wiping of the drive at a much cheaper cost than they did, and even the other competition that are still doing it the old-fashioned way offer it. But their return on it is actually more than what it was previously because their costs are so much lower. I mean, they already have the tool. They just have to click a couple buttons. It gets done, and there's nothing more for them to do. So,
and to emphasize, another key thing is that the endpoint never has to be sent back and forth, right? So we have some MSPs that were offering this service, but the client would actually have to send them the endpoint, and then, you know, they would do it in their office. And then they'd either send it back or, you know, destroy it. Here, that endpoint never leaves the client site. As Rob shows from the portal, you execute that command. It wipes that drive, provides you the certificate of erasure, and then that client now has this endpoint. And if they want to recycle it, you know, so we have customers that, you know, their clients say, well, hey, I've got these 10 old PCs. I don't want to throw them away. I want to donate them to the local library, for example. You know, can you wipe these for us and give us a certificate so that we know that there's no, you know, PII or anything left on there? We do that with Secure Wipe, and then they can very safely take those locally and you know, give them to the library or the church or, you know, whatever it might be. So it's you know, tremendously efficient from a time and cost perspective. And then the other thing I'll add here is there's a unique use case to this as well. So we talk about, you know, recycling or reusing endpoints, but there's a security aspect, which is if an endpoint is stolen, you can actually issue a wipe to it as well, and that will, you know, get rid of all the data on the endpoint. You know, the caveat there is, of course, whoever stole it has to at least have put it back on the internet for enough time for that command to come down. But that's another aspect of Secure Wipe.
So just out of curiosity, when you're sending these commands, what's the, and if it's online, what's the turnaround time on like completion or receiving it, starting it, completing it? I know there's different things here, but is it instant or what are we?
Well, I mean, the information, and you know, we do certain things to kind of prevent man-in-the-middle attacks and things like that. So within 60 seconds, the command is going to be sent down to the endpoint. Okay. Right? Or the endpoint is going to receive that command, I should say. Once that command is received, if you set it to immediately reboot, it's going to reboot, and then it's going to, again, from the firmware, start the wipe on the drive. And what we found is that a wipe that normally could take a couple of hours, if you're doing an OS level wipe, it can take like maybe 20 to 30 minutes using the firmware method. So even that method is a lot quicker. I mean, you know, it's, at that point you're doing the wipe anyway, so it's just you're letting it do its own thing, but it will be ready a lot quicker because we're doing that.
Is there the concept of I know kind of creating a backup of settings, like say this Lenovo, if I wanted to have a backup and I don't know, for whatever reason something happened, I could restore the settings or anything like that?
So, you know, again, we want to be very careful that we're not stepping on other products' toes, especially when it comes to like RMMs and things like that. We don't want to be an RMM. So we want to make sure that, you know, anything that's basically at the OS level, we let other products that are better at doing that than have to recreate it on our end. However, I will say, since you kind of brought it up, we do have a feature that's on the roadmap that is going to allow you to do basically an image restore onto a PC remotely. So if you do have, let's say that, I don't know, Jim in accounting left the office and he left his PC. And now that PC needs to be re-imaged for the next person that's coming in for that job. You'll be able to remotely start a restore process on that PC and put an image back on it, which is different than Windows Reset. Windows Reset brings the OS back to, like freshly installed, but you don't have your RMM installed. You don't have your security suite installed. You don't have any of those other applications installed. And I know that there's other software, again, that can do that. But our idea is you can basically restore the image remotely onto that PC, an image that you created with the version of Windows or another OS with the applications that you use. And you're not limited to only the applications that the restoring software supports, which I've seen some other restoration software that, supports certain third-party software. So you create your image, you restore that image back to the machine, and yeah. So one last thing that I do want to jump into, I know we're kind of coming in here to the edge, and this is kind of a little bit of a sneak peek, but it is this firmware out of sync section. We just released the first part of this. So the idea behind this, if we go in there, again, let's jump into this Dell. We see here the firmware driver on this machine is version 1.2. Latest version is 1.17. Same thing if I go into this HP. The firmware version 15.63, latest version 15.66. So this tells you when your BIOS is out of date, right? Mm-hmm. Now, like I mentioned, this is a sneak peek because this was what we call the detection piece of Secure Update that is ready. And so we decided to release it to our customers to at least give them the information that the BIOS is out of date. The next part of this piece, which will be out later on this same quarter before the end of the year, is our remediation half of that, which allow you to push a capsule update to that BIOS from the dashboard. So when you see that the BIOS is out of date, you'll be able to say, well, update the BIOS for me with the same, immediately scheduled, however you want to do it. But that is coming later on this quarter, but we do have the detection piece available right now. So you'll at least be able to see which BIOSes are out of date and which are not.
You guys are ridiculous. I love this. Seriously. No, I just, I'm kind of geeking out a little bit. This is awesome. It really is. All right. So my next question here before we kind of start wrapping up here. What am I looking at, like pricing wise? Like, what are we, is this something as MSP, I could have hundreds or thousands of device endpoints. If you don't mind me asking, what does that look like for you guys?
So Garrett, if you can share my screen, I can walk you through in 30 seconds for what the pricing looks like.
There you go.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So this is MSP. It's tiered pricing that we offer for our MSP partners. So in low endpoint count, 100 being the minimum, it's $2 per endpoint per month. And I want to emphasize, with that, you get all of the features that Rob's gone over. So secure wipe, secure update, secure config. It's not an a la carte thing. You get them all. And then obviously it tiers down to $1.50 per endpoint as you get to much higher volumes. So very, very simple MSP focused pricing model. And we're very much focused on working with MSP channel partners. We do have some large enterprise and government that's got a slightly different pricing model, but that doesn't affect MSPs in any way.
Oh, this is definitely MSP friendly territory, because I like this. This is very manageable. It makes a lot of sense. The thing about it is, man, I'm thinking about this. You were talking earlier about the audit. I could totally easily use this as a prospecting tool, just jumping in. I mean, this is a no-brainer, because
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll belabor the point, but, go to firmguard.com/CP and just sign up. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. And Garrett, you're 100% right. I mean, not only will you get to eval the product, but more importantly, or equally importantly, you can use this for prospecting purposes. I promise you're going to get real actionable information about your client's endpoints that you can then go to them and have an intelligent conversation around various issues that you uncover from a BIOS perspective.
Oh yeah. This is, and usually I see a lot of stuff, but you guys have really managed to, really catch my eye here, because this is just, this is not something you usually consider what you see. So I love what you guys are doing. I'm glad you guys are doing this, because this is, your little red icon on every motherboard I've ever seen is there. So now I'm seeing a management for it. So this is cool. So for everybody who's out there watching, we're going to be wrapping up here in a minute. But as Ameet said, just go to firmguard.com /CP and check them out. And if you want, you could drop a comment in the LinkedIn or YouTube section to get in touch with them. Because this is fascinating. This is a complete next evolved management of BIOS. So the other thing too is, if you want, this is channel program, you can go to channelprogram.com and search for them and see what other MSPs are saying about them. Because, as I've always said, these reviews are from the trenches.
Yep. And we've got a bunch of videos and other documentation up there as well on Channel Program, as well as, of course, on firmguard.com. Yeah,
this is great. And thank you, everybody. I apologize. I don't know. I'm having these weird technical issues I've never had before, so I have to look. I don't know if it's StreamYard or me, so I'm going to look at that. I apologize if that interrupted anything. But either way, guys, Rob, Ameet, before we have another minute or two, do you have any last thoughts? Any last things you want to leave everybody with?
No, I mean, just, check out the product. It is really cool. Like I said, I've been doing this for many years, and I have the honor of working with a lot of really, really amazing engineers that came up with this. And it's a really cool product. It's getting better. We got these great ideas. I mentioned one of them. Believe me, we got more stuff coming down the line. So just check it out. Reach out to me, Ameet, and we'll be happy to do a one-on-one with you guys.
Okay. Ameet, do you have any last thoughts? Are you good?
No, I'm good. I'll just echo what Rob said. Go to firmguard.com/CP, sign up. You won't be disappointed, I promise you.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, again, I love it. And thank you very much for showcasing this for us. This is, I think, truly one of a kind. You don't see this very often. And this is really cool to see. And I hope others out there are recognizing that as well. But thank you, everybody, for joining. And you connect with these guys at the website or channel program on LinkedIn or YouTube. And thank you, gentlemen, very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
and,
thanks, Garrett. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you on the next demo days.